Namaskar, everyone. Very welcome all of you who are joining us today here for this webinar hosted by AAYM on the topic of Mind Eat. This is the third weekend of the conference that has been going on for the last 3 weeks. And today we are here to listen to some of our eminent speakers talk about a very important topic of food. As we all know, it is the food that we all say that what you eat is who you are. So we have brought this topic over here for you guys to listen to our eminent speakers about what their thoughts are about what we eat, how we eat, when to eat, and how does that impact our body. I'm assuming a lot of you have already attended a lot of our webinars, but for those of you who have not and are joining us today for the first time, I would like to introduce you to AAYM, as we call it, or American Academy of Yoga and Meditation. It's a non-profit organization for physicians, researchers, medical professionals, and practitioners of yoga and meditation. The organization is dedicated to education and research in the field of yoga and meditation by fostering an interdisciplinary approach of linking science, arts, ethics, and spiritualism to improve ways of human life. Our ancient Hatha Yoga texts like Hathapradipika, Gheranda Samhita, etc. Put forth this concept of Mita Ahara and list a lot of recommended foods as well as foods that need to be avoided for different professions, for different kind of people, for sadhakas, for mumukshus, for warriors, so on and so forth. Modern studies have also proven the benefits of different culinary practices, including fasting. In fact, one of the Nobel Prizes in 2018 was given to a Japanese researcher who proved how fasting helps us recoup our body. So we are going to talk about all of those concepts today in this webinar. I would like to introduce our moderator for this webinar, Shri Arun Budhirajaji. Shri Arun Budhirajaji has authored a culinary masterpiece called Bhog, Temple Food of India. Based on the comprehensive study of the culinary culture of the entire country, the research puts forth a common thread on what you eat, when you eat, and how you eat. And it brings out a very simple dictum: eat seasonal, eat local, and eat as per the time of the day, the ahara and the vihara. So without any further ado, I would like to hand it over to Shri Arun Budhirajaji to introduce our other speakers and as well as moderate the event. Thank you.
Namaskar to all in India and the world over. I wish you all a very healthy year ahead. We know what we are all going through world over, but I'm sure that this session will make a small contribution in how we're going to handle the time ahead now and much more ahead. Well, this session has been called Mind Eat. My friend Saurabh just said that, it is known now a bit that what you eat is what you are. We have gone a step further, and there are a lot of researchers, scientists who have worked on it as to how our food and what we eat influences our thinking. It can alter the thinking. And it is based on a very simple principle that, in fact, yoga from the very inception has said that you are going to eat as per your guna. And there are three basic gunas, which is sattvic, rajasic, and tamas. These are basically called threads, three ropes, which make you what you are. And depending on what percentage is more or less, you tend to alter your nutrition. And they clearly give you the guidelines of do's and don'ts. Without going further into this, because we have got some very eminent speakers, and I'm very grateful to them that they have accepted this invitation. And so we will now introduce you to the first panelist, who's unable to make it into the studio, but however, Dr. Uma Naidoo is the Director of Nutritional and Lifestyle Psychiatry in Massachusetts General Hospital. She's trained her research and finished her research from Harvard. She has customized a specific video, which we'll share with you now.
I'm so deeply honored to be included in this event today, and I thank you for your time and attention. My name is Dr. Uma Naidoo, and I'm here to speak to you today about the food-mood connection, which I sometimes call the gut-brain connection as well. I'm a Harvard nutritional psychiatrist and the director of nutritional and metabolic psychiatry at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, in the United States. I am on the faculty of Harvard Medical School. I'm an author, professional chef, culinary instructor, and a nutrition specialist. And I thought I would first start out by describing my area and the field in which I work, which is nutritional psychiatry. While the term is very nascent, it is something that I have practiced for a very long time. And nutritional psychiatry offers clinical guidelines based on nutrition science and evidence-based research for the use of whole foods and healthy nutrients to improve your mental well-being. A few years ago, I was honored to be featured in this article in the Wall Street Journal, and I always point to something that the journalist took from the recording and the discussion she had with me. And apparently, the important take-home point was nutritional psychiatry is not about 10 milligrams of Prozac or 10 blueberries. So food and nutrients do not replace the use of prescription medications or other therapies, but rather enhance and offer a broader option to those trying to improve their mental well-being. The pathways implicated in nutritional psychiatry are many, but today I would like to talk with you about the gut-brain axis, which, as I said at the beginning, really explains the food-mood connection. In the United States, I'm often faced with patients who are asking me about different diets, different foods that they need to include or exclude, and these change on a daily basis. I think that one of the ways to a path forward in nutritional psychiatry, but also an improvement in our mental and our physical well-being, is really teasing apart the truth from the diet wars and the food wars that go on, which create multiple dilemmas for individuals who are simply trying to feel better. My philosophy in nutritional psychiatry, and in fact in psychiatry in general, is the opposite of diet culture. That means that if someone asks me whether to exclude a food or nutrient, I'm more likely to want to ask more questions before I agree that they should do so. Unless you have a food allergy or an intolerance, or perhaps a religious or cultural preference to either eat or not eat something, food is a healthy, whole foods way to improve our mental well-being simply by the choices that we make and the choices that are at the end of our fork. COVID-19 really brought forth the problems in nutrition and in mental health. I would argue that mental health is the silent pandemic that is going on throughout the world. I would also argue that research has pointed to calling the mental health crisis a parallel pandemic, and I would sincerely support that notion. What I'm here to also share is that how we eat can be a path forward to improving our metabolic health, because we do know that individuals with poor metabolic health, with pre-existing medical conditions, one of them being obesity, type 2 diabetes, and others, were really suffering much more with the COVID pandemic, many of whom succumbed to the virus, and others who lived but then had severe side effects or serious side effects with which they are still living. So I would say that one way and a low-hanging fruit, pardon the pun, is really to think about how we're eating as one of the many tools in our toolkit to feeling emotionally better, but also physically better. So coming now to the gut-brain connection, the gut and brain actually originate from the same exact cells in the embryo. These then divide apart to form these two organs at two different parts of the body, but then they remain connected throughout life by the 10th cranial nerve called the vagus nerve. Taking you back to days of anatomy, this is also called the wandering nerve in the body, and it connects the brain and gut to the gut and brain, and it allows for bidirectional chemical messaging between these two organs, and that starts to explain the food-mood connection. In addition, it's important for us to understand that 70% of our immune system is in the gut, and that 90% of serotonin and serotonin receptors are also in the gut. In fact, Hippocrates was onto something here when he said that all the diseases begin in the gut and death sits in the bowel. Now, there are some many functions of a healthy gut microbiome. And I think that individuals who went to medical school about 2 decades ago or longer may not have really learned about the gut microbiome at all, because it's newer science that has emerged over the last 1.5 decades. And yet there's a burgeoning body of research, because between 2013 and 2017, there were at least 12 to 13,000 articles published in this area. My focus, of course, is the gut microbiome in relation to mental health, and some of that research and content is included in my book. But it's also important for us to understand what the gut does for us just on a day-to-day basis. And these are some of the functions. I also share this in the context of the fact that the gut microbiome impacts so many other aspects of our both mental and physical health. So from embryological perspectives, as I mentioned, the gut and brain originate from the same exact cells in the body, which are the neural crest cells. Really, that's how these two organs form. I again mentioned the vagus nerve, and this is the anatomical diagram showing that connection. And the gut and brain remain connected anatomically by physiological methods and by biochemical methods. And I think anatomically, we want to realize that the brain is close to the mouth, where the gastrointestinal system begins. Cranial nerves 9 and 10 are also associated with gastrointestinal function. The vagus nerves, like I said, connects the brain and gut. And treatment of depression sometimes includes a form of treatment called vagus nerve stimulation, speaking again to this connection. I now want to ask you what percent of your cells in your body are Homo sapien cells, and it turns out that only 10% are. So I would say that we are largely microbial, but that also our microbiome is very highly individual. And I like to say that our microbiome is like a thumbprint for each one of us. In my book, the first chapter is named The Gut-Brain Romance, for the simple reason that the gut and brain are connected, but some days are good and some days are not so good, as with romance. And the way that I like to further explain this is that when we eat healthier meals, it's a good day, because the breakdown products of food and digestion are positive products that are broken down by those gut microbes, and therefore positive signaling ends up occurring. When we are on a fast food, junk food, processed food diet, the foods that we know we should be cutting back on, unfortunately, that sets up for inflammation in the gut over time. Doesn't happen immediately, but the effects start to happen immediately through the microbes. And that is when it could end up being a bad day, and hence explaining the gut-brain romance. So what we eat becomes a very powerful lifestyle tool in terms of improving our mental health as well as our physical health. And I think that we know of many foods that we should be staying away from, and you won't be surprised to hear that they're processed foods, junk foods, fast foods, processed vegetable oils, added and refined sugars, artificial sweeteners, trans fats, and the unhealthy fats, such as those found in processed vegetable oils, like I mentioned. In the United States, many people will ask me how many grams of protein they should be eating, but I would argue that the amount of fiber is what is sadly lacking in our diet in the United States. And we know from research that 1 in 10 Americans is eating enough servings of fruit and vegetables. And where do we get our fiber? From vegetables, fruit, beans, nuts, seeds, lentils, legumes, and healthy whole grains. We do not get our fiber from animal or seafood protein. So including these, the basis of vegetables in your diet, as well as those other foods, becomes hugely important for your nourishment, but also for nourishing the gut microbes, which thrive by actually consuming the fiber that we eat. So good gut foods include fiber, prebiotic foods, probiotics, which can be in the form of a supplement, fermented foods, veggies, fruit, whole grains, nuts, seeds, lentils, and beans. So these are the things that really help to nurture our gut. And I like to talk about the color of the rainbow being one of the pillars of nutritional psychiatry that I discuss, because the many different colors of foods, such as vegetables and fruit, bring back rich antioxidants, plant polyphenols, which are extremely important for the gut and for the brain. They also are anti-inflammatory, and these foods will really, really help along your pathway to healing and help along that mind, that brain, mind, and gut-brain connection. Pre and probiotics I touched on, they can actually be in the form of food. And instead of taking a probiotic supplement, you might want to think about including foods that are fermented, which have been shown to really improve symptoms in terms of mental well-being. And these include things like pickles, kimchi, kefir, kombucha, and so many more. Just always be aware of the sugar content in these, especially if you are making them. It's also important in nutritional psychiatry to be aware that many parts of the world deal with food insecurity, poverty, and food deserts. Not everyone has the same level of access. So in any time or at any time that I speak about nutritional psychiatry, acknowledging this and understanding that improving your mental well-being, you may not have the same resources as the next person. So an individualized, personalized treatment plan in nutritional psychiatry becomes extremely important. But where we can include healthy whole foods and nutrients becomes important for our mental health. I also want to just share that there's immense joy in food and that it becomes important to us to embrace this as a way that we can feel healthy and feel better as we move forward in our lives. Thank you for inviting me. It is a pleasure to speak with you today. This is, in case you might be interested in my book. The book has been released in several countries. I know that I'm speaking to a global audience, so that is why I shared this slide. And I hope that you will connect with me and follow me and reach out to me so that I can hear your thoughts about this, the most important gut-brain connection and the connection between food and mental health. I thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Uma Naidoo could not make it, but she's made this tremendous effort of sharing this video, which will remain as part of the YouTube streaming as we go along. So it's a very important information that she has shared. Thank you once again, Dr. Uma Naidoo. I would like to invite our second speaker, which is Professor Dr. Satya Lakshmi ji. She's the Director, National Institute of Naturopathy in Pune, and she's focused on naturopathy and diet. She's got over 30 years of experience, and it's indeed a privilege to get her in this webinar. Naturopathy has been recently gaining strength, but more importantly, what is not known so much, that nutrition is a very, very important pillar of naturopathy. So I would like to now request Dr. Satya Lakshmi ji to please address the audience here.
Yeah, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my views regarding yoga and naturopathy. And the Indian naturopathy has a peculiarity of having yoga as its one of the very important sciences that go in understanding the philosophy as well as in as a therapeutic tool. So today discussion being the mind, food, and then the connection. Right now, Dr. Uma Naidoo has very well explained the connection between the gut and then the mind. And the same has been very well explained in yoga texts. And that also in the beginning, it was explained that Mita Ahara, that is eating moderately. And the yoga further in Hatha Pradipika, it was very well suggested that we should eat only when necessary. That means, but at the same time, there is a caution not to go on fasting also. But today, I would like to take a little bit of your time on explaining the yogic concept of diet from the aspect of Bhagavad Gita, which is known as Panchama Veda or the fifth Veda. So how Bhagavad Gita dealt philosophically the concept of diet or food with regard to making an individual's nature. So if you want to become sattvic, we have to nurture the habit of selecting foods which are sattvic in nature. If you want to become rajasic, you have to start selecting foods that will make you rajasic. So this way, there is a symbiotic relationship between what you choose to eat, and also if you are predominantly a rajasic person, you end up eating rajasic foods. So there is that element of your nature affecting you to choose certain foods. So, but then free will is considered very important in Indian philosophy, and we have to exercise that. And particularly yoga says that any amount of knowing yoga is of no use. So one got to put it into practice. So with that, I will, take you to chapter number 6 in Bhagavad Gita and 17th sloka, which says, Yuktahara viharasya, yukta cheshtasya karmasu, yukta swapnava bodhasya, yogo bhavati dukkhaha. That means one who eats moderately and exercises not only in moderation, but then at approx the needed quantities and then time, and do things according to the necessity. Only such persons, when they practice yoga, can remove dukkha or can actually alleviate suffering or misery. And further in 17th chapter, which is Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga, in that there are 3 shlokas exclusively meant for explaining this sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic qualities of human nature and foods. So the first, if we look into the sattvic food, that says Ayu Sattva Balarogya Sukha Priti Vivardhanaha Rasyaha Snigdhaha Sthirahridya Aharaha Satvika Priyaha. See, the food that gives you life, wellness, strength, health, harmonious satisfaction, all this needs to come from foods which are full of rasa. Rasa means the natural essence of the food that we take. Suppose if we are eating fruits, it's full of its natural rasa, essence. But if you're adding some sugar to it, or if you are adding some other thing to it, its original.
I think you're asking for the song essence. Is that correct?
Yes. So, yeah, am I audible?
You need to be an Amazon Prime member to be able to play essence from Amazon Music. Would you like to learn more?
Please go ahead.
Am I audible? Is it okay?
Yes, you are.
Can I continue?
Yes, you are. Please
Yeah?
continue. Yes.
Yeah. So, so Satvika food is the one which contains its original rasa, essence, and the more we move away from it, it becomes slowly rajasic, in the sense that the more preparation goes into food, it becomes rajasic. So that is again well explained in the shloka 9 in the same chapter, Chatratra Vibhaga Yoga. That is, Katvamla Lavanatyushna Tikshna Ruksha Vidahinaha Ahara Rajasasyeshtaha Dukkashoka Mayaprada. That is, the one who is rajasic, that is hyperactive. For whether the situation requires or not, a person is hyperactive and more than necessary. that person always chooses the food which is slightly devoid of its original essence and which goes into a lot of preparation. That's why it is called rajasic, which can be linked to the foods that are offered to kings. The Chappan Bhog, the 56 types of foods that are served to kings. These kind of foods, which are full of oil, tikshna, that is hot and also spicy and full of gravy and all the food that we see in our day-to-day life is more or less rajasic. So if we want to become rajasic, so these are the foods that we should choose. Then comes the sattvic food, tamasic food. I'm sorry. This tamasic food is the food which remains in the body, which will not actually uh, be useful for spiritual needs of an individual, because the entire yoga talks about the spiritual needs. This 100% will remain in the body, and all our energies are taken away in processing it and then storing in the body. So, what are these foods? The foods which are fully devoid of life. In fact, Yatayamam Gatarasam, the food that is old, stale, and all full of chemicals or stored and you know not fit for human consumption, and bad smell, all this kind of food. But then we camouflage this bad smell with spices and all other things, and then we continue to eat. And the chemicalized food is considered tamasic food. So this remains in the body. So if we see the pattern that is explained, the sattvic food is the natural food. All vegetables and fruits that are in nature, whatever is available, are sattvic foods. And then fully prepared food is rajasic food, the routine food that we eat at home. And then the food that is brought from packets and eaten straight away, taken from packets, starting from our biscuits to bread to any other foods, all these are considered tamasic food. They remain in the body and then they start tinkering with the metabolic processes of the body. That doesn't allow you to really uh, think well. It in fact makes you more dull, inert, and then the tamasic persons never take responsibility to the self, and rajasic people unnecessarily respond and react, and whereas sattvic people are balanced. So if we are emerging into a sattvic nature, we have to start stepping into selecting foods which are full of rasa, or full of its original essence. So with this, we have come to a clear understanding of yogic understanding of diets that will give us a nature. When it comes to naturopathy, Indian naturopathy, which has imbibed the uh, yoga into its practice, but then retained the essence of naturopathy principles for therapeutic needs. So, naturopathy divides food into three categories. One is the eliminative diets, which help in cleansing the system, removes toxins from the body. That is again all the fruits and citrus juices and vegetable juices, smoothies, and all these are considered eliminative diets. Then comes the soothing diets. These are the diets which are given during convalescence, when person is recuperating and then recovering. Then comes the constructive diet, that is when we eat normal diet. So these are the three diets which are essentially used in naturopathy therapeutics. Yeah, I think I will stop here and then take questions later. Thank you very much once again for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Satyalakshmi. You mentioned about daily food and what are the routinic foods that we have, what changes we can make. the question that is coming up is that what are the small things that we can add to our regular eating that we do, whether in India we consume chapati, or whether in the Western culture we use bread or sorts. What can we add to that so it doesn't take away the delight of eating that item, and yet it doesn't change, alter it in any way, and it yet becomes healthy? Because the debate or the essence that is coming through is that there are some healthy food. There are two buckets. There are healthy food and there are tamasic food, or let's say there are fast foods. There is no seems to be a marriage happening somewhere there, and you don't expect from a human being to say, oh, I'm going to give up everything and I'm only going to do this. It may do it for a fad, for a day, for a month or two, but we'll go back to it. So it's better that we alter what we already have and continue enjoying eating it.
Yeah, I do understand. We eat for many reasons, not necessarily for our stomach, and not necessarily because we are hungry. We eat because we meet people. We eat because food is available. We eat because we have to go to office. So under these compulsions, what food is good, but there is nothing called a quick fix. But all said and done, wherever possible, avoid high fat diets. Like now, food is the way it is coming to us is packed food. I mean, um, it's full of energy. These energy dense foods are really causing a problem, because any amount of exercise is not going to replace the calories that are coming through this food. So somewhere we have to make a constant effort to go towards nature. So one got to constantly nudge. So for that, I would say that bring in more of fruit and vegetable into the diet. So at least 30 to 40% of diet, if that can be of fruits, nuts, vegetables, and to a great extent, you can continue to eat what you were eating earlier. But then a constant effort, and then that food, fruits, and then vegetables should contain its original essence. That again, one must make an effort. If you make a brinjal curry or any other curry, like palak paneer, what is served in a hotel, then it makes no sense. So we have to, once in a while, violation is okay. And to remove the bad effects of all these, periodical fasting. And fasting also, now we are coming up with many tools of using fasting. You can do fasting, rasopavas, right? You can even take juice fast, or you can take intermittent fast, wherein bring in more number of hours between your meals without any food, and then just drink water. This kind of conscious uh, choice exercised on foods, then alone we can go close to what we call, health, or even, as just now Dr. Naidoo told us, to start taking care of our brain. If you want to control your brain, you have to control your food.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Satyalakshmi ji. And I'm sure there are more and more questions that will be popping up in the chat box. We'll take them as time goes by. Thank you once again. And I would now like to request Dr. Fernando Gomez Pinilla to please join in. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. He is a professor in the Department of Neurosurgery and Integrative Biology and Physiology, and is also the director of the Neuro Laboratory at the UCLA. So without wasting time, since time is very precious on our hand, I would request Dr. Fernando to please address our viewers.
Okay, thank you so much for the invitation, and hopefully everyone can see my screen here. Yeah, so I am a professor at UCLA, and I am a neuroscientist, and my work consists in explaining how things work particularly on the brain. And I've been studying about the effect of foods for many years. And now it's becoming more known, isn't it, that the food can affect the brain. However, this has been a slow process. And what I am showing on the screen right now is an article that we wrote in The Economist, isn't it, that a food brain, which actually you can see is a brain which is composed of really good food. Here, for example, in the area important for learning and memory, we have some seafood and you can see other foods. So I think the other speakers made the point already that the nutrition is very important, isn't it, for brain function, and particularly for mental disorders. Poor food quality can be a problem. We know now for many diseases, isn't it, psychiatric diseases in terms of depression, bipolar, neurological disorders. We know now that the Alzheimer's disease, food is an extremely important component in order to have a brain being protected from Alzheimer's. So one main issue here, isn't it, in terms of explaining how food can work on the brain, is metabolism, as some other of the speakers already mentioned. There is an issue here about energy metabolism, isn't it? Like we can develop, for example, condition of metabolic syndrome in the body. And I'd like to say a few words, isn't it, how metabolic syndrome can affect brain function. And also, I don't have time to talk about this. I like to mention these words, nutrigenomics, which is extremely important these days. Nutrigenomics, isn't it, is the genomics of nutrition. So basically, is try to understand what are the genes important in terms of regulating the function of food in the brain, and that's extremely important because we use bioinformatics, system biology, which is a very important tool to manage thousands and thousands of genes together, and that has been a main limitation in the field, because when we try to explain the action of food, the action is not only one, isn't it? There are so many components, so many protein genes involved. So we need a special science in order to handle these type of things. So in terms of just an example, isn't it, the effect of food on depression? As you know, isn't it, we can have a healthy diet, as other of the speaker already mentioned, isn't it, in terms of some of the main components for a healthy diet, in terms of vegetables, vitamins, omega-3 fatty acid, for example. And the other one, at least in the Western world, and my understanding also in India and many countries that are being invaded these days by fast food restaurants like McDonald's and others, it's a big problem, isn't it? Because the type of diet that the people start consuming, and I've been very surprised also in my trips to Japan, isn't it, that the people start eating a lot of junk food that we call, in terms of the very caloric food, high contents in sugar and everything. So we know now, for example, that the balance in the diet can affect many of these diseases. And for this, one of the main problems is obesity that is occurring also in the world, isn't it? Because of the people start eating bad food. They can affect many processes in the body and brain, like inflammation, isn't it? Oxidative stress, which is the way that the cells handle energy. So the mitochondria is extremely important, isn't it, in the handling of metabolic energy in the system. So anyway, so the other speakers already talk about the gut-brain connection, and one thing that if I have time, I'd like to mention is in terms of epigenetics. Epigenetics is an extremely important word, and it's becoming very fashionable also these days, because epigenetics, the most provoking thing is a mechanism that can enable transmission of information across generations. So what it means, if we have a healthy issues, isn't it, can go to our genes, and in somehow that can go to next generation. And actually there are very provoking studies showing that indeed, as the one of the doctors mentioned, we are what we eat, and indeed that happened, isn't it? Because it's even more than that. We are, I can add to that, what our grandparents were eating, isn't it, several generations ago, isn't it? And that's how food can be extremely important for this. I am not going to go on details on this, but this is a study that we published many years ago, which was some of the first evidence showing like food can affect molecular systems in the brain that are very important for cognitive function, learning and memory, managing depression, and this factor is called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Basically, we show like animals that were exposed, for example, to a diet high in calories and saturated fat, reduce the levels of this factor in the brain. And also, we show some hopes in terms of exercise, that the doing exercise actually was sort of reverting these effects in animals that were learning. So basically, in addition to having this factor, animals were learning poorly, isn't it, that when they were eating this high-fat diet, but this could be counteracted somehow by doing exercise. And for this, I just want to mention this piece of information that also is becoming very relevant these days in terms of the consumption of the sugars. Isn't it? Sugars start to, I mean, it's practically every food in the Western society has some sugar, and it's a big problem, isn't it, the consumption of many beverages that contains high contents of fructose, high fructose corn syrup. So we have shown actually the eating too much fructose can affect some of the bases in the brain that control learning and memory. So basically, we have shown like the too much fructose eating in animal models, the long-term potentiation, for example, is affected. That is one of the main bases for learning and memory, and also brain structures are affected. For example, this is a synapse, which is the place of communication of two cells, two brain cells in the brain. The membrane that made the contact is affected by eating fructose. So anyway, foods are very important for brain function. And also some of the speakers mentioned, isn't it, the fasting and controlling calories and everything. I can tell you there are very strong bases these days for explaining how fasting can work on the brain. it has been shown in animals and also humans that controlling the amount of calories, isn't it, reducing the amount of calories actually helps animals to live longer, isn't it? This is have been done in yeast, worms, and so practically we can prolong the lifespan, isn't it, in animals. Also, we know, isn't it, and you know people very well in India, isn't it, how fasting can be extremely good, isn't it, promoting health. So anyway, all of this goes to mechanisms in the body and brain that control the amount of energy. And too much energy is bad for the brain because too much energy goes to the release of toxic waste in the brain. So also, you know, this diet highs in omega-3 fatty acids that are becoming extremely fashionable and healthy for many things. I am not going to talk more about this because you know that it's found in fish and everything. I am just going to let you know that it's extremely important for transmission of information in the brain. So as I mentioned, synapse is the place of communication between cells in the brain. And there is a membrane that control this communication. And the membrane, DHA is part of the structure of the membrane, are like bricks in the transmission of information. So that's why it's good, isn't it, for example, to consume fatty acids. And also, I am not going to go in details of the figure. We show that if we combine exercise with healthy eating, like DHA, it's even better. The structure of the brain gets much stronger and functional. So that's something important that I like to mention, isn't it? Diet is extremely important, but as you know, that's part of the meeting, isn't it? It's diet, yoga, meditation, exercise. So many things are working together. And the news that I can tell you today is like in the brain, a lot of the things are working together in order to affect the brain. And for this, we have even go to the genes. As I mentioned before, we have been doing nutrigenomics in order to explain the effect of food in the brain. And by mapping many thousands of genes, we have found some overlap of genes. We have genes that can respond separately to many of this type of food, which are here, isn't it? But there is an overlap of genes. These are genes that can respond to several of these type of foods. And that is very important in terms of creating therapies. I mean, using food as a medicine to cure diseases, because of the same genes, for example, which are reduced by eating a bad diet, like a high-fat diet, can be reversed, isn't it, by eating a good diet, isn't it, like a omega-3 fatty acid, for example. So there is our genome, I mean, our genes pool in the brain are prepared to do this. And this is just a couple of words about exercise, isn't it? The why is so important, isn't it? So we have shown, and others, isn't it, that exercise can be extremely good and to help cognitive function, isn't it, and to reduce cognitive dysfunction in many diseases and aging. And what I like to mention, isn't it, that what I said, the pathways of exercise in the brain are very similar to diet. So I mentioned to you already the synapse in the brain that is very important for transmission of information, exercise can also act on these pathways. So basically, isn't it, if we take care of our health, we can manage this, the eating proper food and exercise. And indeed, as some of the doctors were mentioning about what type of food to eat and not to eat, isn't it? There are very strong bases for this. Food is like a pill, isn't it? It's better than a pill. For example, when we decide to take vitamins and this, foods are there is a whole pharmacology in the foods. For example, here is the composition of a piece of broccoli, isn't it? Spinach here. And you can see here is amazing when you go and see vitamins and all of these which are present in the food. So anyway, eating food is not magic, isn't it? It's not like no, there is a strong pharmacology. I mean, foods have a specific vitamins and different nutrients that we have shown extremely important. And also a few words about this brain-gut interaction that also another speaker was talking about. There are strong bases to think about this brain-gut interaction. I mean, the brain is connected to the periphery by several pathways using the autonomic nervous system. Isn't it? Practically the brain and spinal cord control every single organ in the body, including the gut. And also a lot of research has been done on microbiota these days. Also, in the same way, the brain can regulate the composition of microbiota that is present in the gut. So, by the way, microbiota is everywhere. Every person has like between 3 and 5 pounds of bacteria in the body. So these bacteria, as I said, are extremely important, and we need to work is a need to keep them as friends, because when they become enemies, it's very problematic. So anyway, there are strong bases to think that we have the power in the brain to control a lot of these organs. Also, as I said, exercise is very important for that. And just a few words, how this brain-gut interaction can work. We have done studies using fructose, as I said, this sugar that doesn't seem that good. One of the problems with fructose compared to other sugars is like they produce too much triglyceride and bad lipids in the liver, and that doesn't happen with other sugars. So we have been using this property and feeding animals with fructose, for example, like in this case. So when you look at the liver of animals that have been eating fructose, it's full of these lipid droplets, which are small particles composed of triglyceride. So, and that's happened to people, isn't it? Also, we don't control very much our diet. We have a lot of the things working together, and also can affect in other organs. And also, in terms of the gut-brain interaction, we have looked at, for example, markers of inflammation in the liver. And we have been looking at also the capacity of animals to learn. And there is a very direct relationship. More inflammation in the liver, for example, can lead some problem in the capacity for learning. So anyway, this brain-gut interaction is extremely important, and now we know the pathways for this, isn't it, using the autonomic nervous system, also using the hormonal system, the control by the hypothalamus. And here, as I said, we have bacteria that are part of the loops. And whatever happened in the gut also can come back to the brain. So we have this pathway, isn't it, like how liver can affect the liver dysfunction actually can affect the brain. And just to finish, a couple of words about epigenomics, epigenetics. So epigenetics is a capacity that we have in the genes to save information, not in the classical way through mutations or everything. So by promoting these epigenetic changes can affect many functions in the body and brain. And also, a lot of studies these days indicate that this can be transmitted across generations. There have been studies showing very extremely provocative studies, for example, showing like the following families for several generations, that what the people were eating 3 generations ago or 4 generations ago can affect, isn't it, our health? Isn't it, for example, it has been shown that the capacity to develop diabetes these days depends very much, isn't it, what people were eating 100 years ago, isn't it? That can be transported to the brain in the form of epigenetic changes. So anyway, that's what I have to say. And this is people who have helped me to do all of this work. I am in Los Angeles, California, and sailing is very important. Here we have an ocean. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to me. And if you have any question, I would be happy to answer.
Dr. Fernando. We are running a little short on time. So what we are doing is that we are going to invite the next speaker and then take all the questions after the last speaker is over.
Sure.
May I now request Chef Manjeet Gill to please come and address the audience. Manjeet Gilji is the chairman of World Chef Culinary Culture and Heritage Committee. It's called the Soul Foods. And he has been the recipient of a very prestigious award called the Etofire Medal, from the World Association of Chefs. So without taking more time, I would like to request Chef Manjeet Gilji to please address us.
Thank you very much, Arun, to give me the opportunity in such a prestigious dialogue. And to start fast, I believe I will be talking more as a chef from the practical in the kitchen and making the food good to put it in the mouth and then it works for nourishment. So, I believe that this is the teaching of our, the vertical of Ayurveda, which is the gastronomy. That the food is truth. Anya hi satya hai. It's divine. It nourishes the body, mind, and soul. Mindful eating, as we're talking about the food mind, mindful eating relies on mindfulness, a form of meditation. Mindful eating is about awareness of overall eating experience, respect, and positive feel about food. Mindful eating is powerful tool to regain control of your eating. Mindful eating gives pleasure and satisfaction, and thus tripti, give you peace. Mindfulness in food starts from planning the cooking, purchase of the ingredients, to pre-preparations, cooking, serving, and eating. Every step is very important when you talk about the food. And a good cook, chef, cook, I mean to say the people who do cooking every day at home, also anyone who is cooking, it doesn't matter you cook commercially or you cook at home, the fundamentals remain same because the food is for human. And in this, all three yogas has to be applied with the knowledge, action, and devotion. Um, the and learn how the season and the climate affect your digestion and change your diet accordingly. The body tells you this. You study your body. Focus on food qualities, that is the freshness of the food, natural, seasonal, local, and not just keep counting the calories. According to me, it's not that important. And must understand, as Dr. Satya said about the rasa, which is the essence of food, I take as it is the rasa is the taste. And this is very clearly mentioned in our gastronomy of Ayurveda. There are 6 tastes: sweet, salty, sour, pungent, bitter, astringent. Now, these tastes are of the natural flora and fauna. They are not that the tastes are after the cooking. You prepare the food, understanding the taste of flora and fauna, and then do the mixes and create the balanced taste, which has all the 6 taste experience in your meal, and which is much better and make you happy than ever. And even the Ayurveda, the Dr. Satya, they will agree with me that the food, according to Ayurveda, the food is not nutritious. Even having the nutrients in it, if it is not tasty. Now, the tasty, one must understand what I'm talking about, taste, not over taste or not anything in excess is bad. And food has to be in harmony with the nature's principle, or it's not food for human consumption. There's something wrong. Um, Now, in our system, which I practice, this view of thing what I'm talking, maybe you feel it might be difficult, but I know since I learned all these things, I practice them even in my commercial cooking the whole life. Last 47 years I'm cooking in a commercial kitchen, highly commercial, and the large hotel, where I'm cooking with a very iconic restaurants in India. There are 4 essentials of cooking. And these essentials are, the number one is the knowledge of food, not only that what the name of the food or what color it is, but must understand the characteristics of each ingredient, that how they behave with the human body, how they behave in the cooking chemistry. That's very, very important to understand, and must understand the nutrients of these food. And who only combine the ingredient, you only put that particular ingredient into the food if there is a reason. And the reason has to be of wellness and of taste. Taste and then the wellness. So you must understand the characteristics. Number 2, that you must involve yourself in cooking. You must have a touch and feel, emotional feel with the ingredients, with the food. And so you must have that. Unless you don't have that emotional feel, and then I don't know, the doctors must explain me better. I have a Dr. Naidoo, that your brain will not start working with the food. The brain will only start thinking and reacting with the food when you emotionally touch the food. Emotionally you feel the food. Emotionally you feel the texture of the food. Unless that doesn't happen, there is something missing. So it's very, very essential to be there. And number 3 is that the mind must be there where cooking is happening. It is the very highest yoga of meditation. And these are easy to do it. It's not difficult. Because now everybody is talking that your mind reflects into your food you cook. So mind can reflect only the best when your mind is there when cooking is happening. It doesn't travel because mind can do whatever, wherever travel it can. And the last, not the least, is that you must have good thoughts in mind when you cook. You must have positive thoughts in mind. You must remember your God. If not the God, at least recall that how your last 24 hours, which are the good things you had in last 24 hours, which are the good people you met with the last 24 hours, or they come into your life, and thank God and you be with the good thoughts. And that is what Arun Buddhi Raja's book, if you say, which is the Bhog, is a fantastic and the great book is written. These four essentials are there. Then only the food become the temple food. Then become the food which is good for the human being consumption and does goodness to the food. And if you have time, I can give little more that, how you relate. Suppose I am making a paratha as a cook, I examine the of consciousness. After the recipe in mind or in hand, I take a deep breath, relax, and recall that I am in the presence of my diner, my loved one, or my God, or for whom I'm cooking. I recall the last 24 hours, and which I told you before. And after that, dough of the prata is made. Wheat flour form has been transferred into another form, which is the dough. It's a complete change of the form and subjected to the elements of water, fire, and earth, which are the five elements of our nature. In just the right proportion and with the right skill, cooked with the right timings, one could hear the sound of ghee while sizzling on a moderate griddle with just the right timing and appreciate assignment consisting of good mental intentions.
Chef
To
Manjari, sorry, we have a lot of questions waiting for you. So there is a
give me 30 seconds. I'm not
okay,
30
okay.
seconds. I'm at the end only. And mental intentions to manifest a delicious prada or meal that satisfies both you and for whom prada is cooked. What I mean to say is that you have to involve yourself totally in it. And that's why, that is how that all mindful consciousness cooking embarrasses the act of cooking. It makes it spiritual cooking. It's very important. Unless you don't. And the last, just one, is the must change the outlook of your food should change. Food is not a commodity. It is not a commodity. I understand you all understand what the commodity is, and it is the only thing which go inside the body and absorb into body and nourish our seven tissues. So we must deal with the food as an auspicious substance which is for our body. So food is not anything else in this world can be commodity, but not the food. I'm ready for question answer.
Thank you. The first question that's coming up is that, we want people to not eat so and so thing, eat only healthy food, but they do their daily eating, like you said, a paratha or a chapati or a lentil. Now, in your vast experience of serving diners, what kind of additions can be made to our daily food which we are eating that becomes more nutritious and healthier, especially in today's time also? One. The second thing is that we have huge craving for sugar, sweetness. How can we alter that and yet make, I'm sure when you're serving a diner, you are giving him also or her some sweet food also.
I will send you, it falls again what I'm talking about, the 6 days, which are very, very important. Now, definitely people have a craving for the sweet. Now, sweet is a natural taste. And you must have seen when the child is just born, you can it only accept the sweet, not any other taste. All other tastes are developed lately. So sweet is very, very important taste. But it should be at the level of taste, not the indulgence of too much. And try to take as much natural taste you can, natural sweetness you can have, which is more complex, not a simple one. but the complex will gradually keep giving you energy to that. That may be the fruits like dates, the figs. There are many other fruits which can bananas. You can use them into your sweet dishes which you make to the right proportion at the right. And they are not only like even a gur, which is a complex, or a jaggery, which they are, if you really analyze them, they are not only sweet, they have other tastes also in them. They have other taste, they have sourness, they have a saltness, they have a bitterness, they have the other taste also, which balances the food very well. So try to consume take the sugar indirectly from the fruits or the dry fruits like the raisins and all that. Use that sweet as much as possible.
Right. That's very informative. We wanted to ask Dr. Satyalakshmi ji that in the natural eating foods that you have got, what can you recommend where people can make it easy, yet not lose taste? If you can share certain findings that has happened in your institute and they have come out to become part of the center of the plate.
Yeah. Of late, we started for quite some time now talking a great deal about millets. Millets are the rich source of nutrition, and taste-wise, they're no different from the other cereals that we are eating. Cereals become our staple food, rice and wheat. But then rice and wheat being high starch foods, and they're more uh, and hardly any fiber in that. So the best alternative is to go for millets, and millets are a natural choice, not only in terms of nutrition and as a replacement to rice and wheat, but then they are ecologically sustainable foods. And then if we are also seeing the social angle, and in India more so, and farmers are committing suicide because they are completely uh, you know going out of food crops to commercial crops. And then this is, and on one side we are all becoming diabetic, hypertensive, and all kinds of metabolic disorders on one side. On the other side, farmers committing suicide, and environment getting completely uh, uh, you know uh, uncontrollable changes that are taking place. And millets come as a solution to all these problems, and they're highly nutritious. And as per a National Institute of Nutrition Hyderabad study, that 200 times more nutritious when compared to rice and wheat. So why not have it? And then the taste wise, they're absolutely fabulous. And we are, that's why training people into, because two generations have completely gone out of cooking millets. We do not know how to make an edible dish out of it and tasty dish out of it. So now we are
Right.
reinventing how to make tasty dishes out of it, and highly nutritious, and at the same very tasty. So I think we
Right.
should slowly shift to at least one millet meal a day.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Lakshmi. My next question is to Dr. Fernando. In your research, which is fairly evidence-based, we are also seeing the rise in sleep disorder during today's times. People are operating from home, the timings are odd. Anything they would like to share with people as to what would be the solution that you have learned to tackle this menace of sleep disorder?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is part of the same equation, isn't it? In terms of research, we know that the centers that control sleep are very dependent on metabolism, isn't it? So there is a very important interaction between food, exercise, and so basically, my answer is the diet. When we eat, we know, isn't it, that it's very important, isn't it, the when we eat a certain time of the days of the day, we can regulate better sleep, and also exercise can be a very important tools to control sleep disorders. As I said, there are very strong bases for this by looking at the brain. We know now in the hypothalamus, many molecules that regulate sleep are very heavily influenced by foods and the type of things that I mentioned in my lecture.
Great. Thank you very much. Just coming to Dr. Satyalakshmi ji, one is egg sattvic. Two, in today's time, when people are so busy, how do we avoid, as Bhagavad Gita says, that eating any stale food is not recommended? How do we avoid that? How do we tackle that issue? And the third question is the consumption of ghee, which is a clarified butter. How much? How less? Is it good? Is it bad? Because at one time it had gone out of the kitchen. Now hope we are seeing the revival of desi ghee at least coming back into the kitchen.
Yeah. First of all, from yoga point of view, egg cannot be seen as sattvic, but egg can be seen as sattvic going by its definition. Sattva foods are, sattva means purity, and ahimsa is embedded in that. That is non-violence. If it is non-violent egg, no problem. It is still called technically sattvic. So egg can be seen as sattvic. Then the second question, you talked about sugar.
Yes, we said that people have craving for sugar. What can they do? What you can share one or two recipes with us to demonstrate the point.
Yeah, and sugar or pure starch, is addictive. The more you take, you end up taking it. So you have to reverse it by combining other foods. Like, say, for example, if you eat sweet made of sugar, slowly remove some amount of sugar and then add jaggery or add honey or some kind of reduce the pure sugars. The more you reduce pure sugars or add, as Mr. Gill just now mentioned, add fruit to it or natural substances like honey. If these are added and then reduced to sugar in a systematic way, you have to reduce. It has to be a conscious effort. There are no shortcuts to it. And with regard to ghee, it's again, there are, for different age groups, it has to be planned in that way. For kids, you can give any amount of ghee and there is no problem. And for elders, as they keep, their requirement of fat will come down, and then the metabolic process will not be, the fire that is required to digest ghee slowly comes down. So, according to the understanding of yoga and naturopathy, slowly as we progress in age, we have to reduce it. That's it. And across population, we cannot say that you can take 5 grams or 10 grams. That is not possible.
Awesome. Yeah. Right. One last question to Dr. Fernando before I come to Chef Manjeet Gilji. There has also been a lot of talk about an increased levels of stress for the kind of challenges that we are facing globally. What has been your learning in terms of management of stress in some very simple way, if you can help the audience so they can use it as a tool, or what has been your finding?
Yeah, stress is a very complicated issue because stress may be good under certain circumstances, isn't it? In terms of, because total lack of stress can promote depression. So as I said, a little bit of stress can be good. So my best recommendation is try to make stress positive, isn't it? Like, for example, if we have too much stress, make your stress useful. For example, anxiety and all of these, try to make it work in terms of have some type of occupation. If you have too much energy, try to, instead of sitting and thinking too much, isn't it? Now we have all of this problem with COVID and everything. Try to make it useful. For example, if you are at home, something very simple, try to fix your house or try to do things you have never had time in the past, isn't it? But now with the pandemic, you can use it positively. And as I said, stress is very, it's a complicated situation because too much stress can drive you crazy. Also, the total lack of stress can also drive you crazy, can promote depression. And so, as I said, you can also control this by food, isn't it? By eating. As I mentioned, a lot of, we know now, for example, foods high in sugar or they can also induce more stress. Exercise is one of the best tools to reduce stress. So anyway, there are very small things that can help to reduce stress.
Thank you. As we are coming close to the end of the program, may I, on a lighter note, ask Chef Manjeet Gilji that he has seen so much of evolution of recipes and changes happening, and a simple roti becoming even more exotic. Just share one or two interesting changes that you have brought to the diner's plate in the recent time.
Good. See, the thing is, you have to make food tasty, and that's the thing. Now, you do cooking with the mind. You do cooking from the scratch. Every piece, every step is in your control, and you create taste as the diner require or as your person for whom you are cooking. And of that, so there has to be a balance of six tastes to be done. You see, like Dr. Naidoo said about the blueberries, they take care of the depression and those kind of things. Now it is not the berry, it is the taste of the berry. And that one has to understand the taste of the berry, the tartness, the sweetness, and astringency in that, in the berry. And these are the things. And when you create those tastes, I'm sure any dish will take care of your depression, will relieve you from the stress with the blueberries does. So it's all the taste, the food, how you cook. So to create the taste, like I'm saying, I do this practice sometimes. Like you made even a sweet halwa, you put a pinch of garam masala in it at the end and mix it. It will become a little more aromatic. Some people not even able to realize, but they say, "Oh, it's very tasty." It will, because it is not necessary that you are able to find out what is in the food, what is that, but it gives you happiness, it gives you present, make you feel nice. So it is good. But later you can tell also what all you put in that. But you have to practice now garam masala, the right garam masala, not the some chefs make it with 10, 15, 20 ingredients in it, but the right garam masala, which is 6, 7 ingredients and the spices, it's very good for the digestion, for the keep the balance of the rest of the food and all that. So you have to create the food. Understand? I'm telling you, you cannot make healthy food if you don't understand the Ayurvedic 6 rasas, the taste, which is sweet, salty, sour, bitterness, pungent, and astringent. That is the taste of the natural form of the flora and fauna. And like anything you do, like for example, even I also realized that, when we used to work learning the culinary, the garnishes are very important to every food on top. But we used to see, we realized that we put only fresh coriander in most of our every food. But once you learn these things, you realize the coriander is not a garnish. Coriander is for the health of the gut flora. So it is whatever food you make, but you put a lot of coriander also in that at the end or on the top. I'm not saying in every dish, but most of your food and your day. more fresh coriander you eat in a season, particularly, it will take care of your gut flora, and which everybody is talking about the gut flora. And I again and again say, is the taste of food you have to create. Learn the taste, and you will become a better taster. And like in a lighter way, they say that the flavors are for the body, the taste is for the brain.
Thank
Unless
you.
the tasty food is not there, your brain will not stimulate to react on the food, and the digestion and metabolism and the whole process will only start then.
Thank
That's
you
what.
very much. Thank you very much. I would like to thank all our experts who have come here, taken the effort to share their knowledge with us. If there are any questions that there are there, please mail it to us so that we can even post this program. We can have it sent to our eminent panelists. I'm also very grateful to Dr. Fernando because it's very early for him in LA. So good morning, and I hope you catch up with sleep. Thank you once again on behalf of AAYM. Myself, Arun Budhiraja. I'm very grateful. Thank you very much. And I'd like to hand it over to the host, who is now going to be on the screen soon.
All right. Thanks a lot, Anilji. Thanks a lot, Anilji, for this amazing moderation. I think, all the speakers brought out very important and pertinent points. I'm personally feeling that I got a lot out of it. Especially, the talk of Dr. Uma and, the talk from Dr. Fernando, providing a lot of research, evidence-based information about the nutrition. I think that was very, very helpful. I was also, very taken by the fabulous talk by Chef Gilji. He thunderously declared that food is not a commodity. You have to cook it as a bhog, and then you have to eat it as a prasad. So I am going to take that back and probably implement that in my daily life as well. And thanks a lot to you, Dr. Satyalakshmi ji, as well, for providing us with some delectable recipes, how to improve your food, and make it a general practice to eat better food on a daily basis. I hope that our viewers would have taken something out of it, and would probably move away from the practice of managing their health one chemical at a time or one parameter at a time. Rather, look at it more holistically and eat better food for better health, and not try to micromanage your health. As I said, one chemical at a time, one parameter at a time, right? So with that, we are right at the hour. We would look forward to close this amazing session today. Our next session, which is yoga in cardiovascular diseases, is going to start in about 15 minutes of time. So I would hope some of you will find your way into that session as well. I'm personally going to be there, and I hope that to be a very informative session as well. And right before we close, I would just like to thank once again our speakers, as well as the support team, the technology team, Ritesh ji, Anjali ji, Rupa ji, without whose great efforts this program would not have been possible, and countless other volunteers who have been working behind the scenes to make this conference possible. So again, thanks a lot everyone for joining, and hope to see you in the next session, which is starting in 15 minutes. Thanks a lot.